Live.
Everywhere.
On netrootsradio.com.
David Waldman.
Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. There you are. Okay, all right. Welcome to David fighting with the mute button this morning. It is Tuesday, February 11th, 2025. Time to get another show started. Not that the mute button had anything in mind about that. All right. Well, a little bit of a struggle this morning, but a bit of a struggle to get to the computer on time as well, as I was reading through the news of the day, which, well, you know, it's not great. What can I tell you? I guess the top story of the day, although it takes 5 or 6 different forms, is, well, we're seeing the beginning of the Trump administration, you know, the answer to the question, will they or won't they defy court orders? And so far, it's just generally a yes, but newspapers are going to be reluctant to write about it because the resistance to and the defiance of the court orders doesn't take the form of, I hereby defy the court orders, on a sheet of parchment signed by Donald Trump, which, even if it was on a sheet of parchment signed by Donald Trump, I would question, just in terms of its validity and authenticity. But essentially all you have to do, of course, to defy the court orders is simply defy them. And there's no news event that helps define when that has happened and when it has not. All right. So what can I tell you? Lots to round up in that respect. And I was reading through all of that as I was preparing for the show. The other, I guess, item of interest, which I haven't put a great deal away on, I don't know. I guess President Trump thinking he'll be trolling Democrats to some extent, and I guess part of my disinterest in watching it happen is a sort of an effort to resist the distraction of watching it happen. Playing around with his pardon pen, Donald Trump, I guess, has looked to perhaps demoralize Democrats by dropping cases against pardoning Democratic elected officials turned criminal. And ordinarily, I guess Democrats are depressed by the idea of, well, why can't we police our own and say, look, you know, we do this and you should be doing this too. When we find somebody who's doing wrong, it doesn't really matter what political party's label they wear, we do something about it. Whereas Donald Trump says, yeah, I do too. I try and leverage them and force them to do my bidding instead. So Rod Blagojevich, do you remember him? Governor of Illinois, and among several other things, most famous for trying to sell Barack Obama's Senate seat when he ascended to the presidency. He was, you know, he had the legal right, the state constitutional right to appoint a successor to the seat, and decided to just have essentially an open bidding process for it. And, you know, depending on how much you were willing to pay him, he would name you to a U.S. Senate seat. And, well, as it turns out, that and a few other things are against the law, and he was sentenced to prison. Trump already commuted his sentence, which was why I was initially confused to find reports yesterday that Trump was going to be pardoning Blagojevich, and I thought, but didn't that already happen? And the clarification is, well, he commuted the sentence. He was in prison. Trump freed him with the commutation of the sentence during his first term. I think, I don't remember whether it was on the way out the door or not, but, very trolly move. And now, of course, there's very little reason to do something like this. I don't know whether Blagojevich has any specific plans that were precluded to him as a convicted felon. But now Trump, I guess, looks to expunge the record by pardoning him and thereby, I guess, I don't know what, make some Democrats angry. And by the same token, Eric Adams, mayor of New York City, and more or less caught dead to rights taking gigantic bribes from the government of Turkey, as we now try and pronounce it. Turkey, perhaps. He too has essentially agreed to God knows what, essentially getting out of the Trump forces' way when they declare war on blue New York City as a sanctuary city and want to make their immigration raids and God knows whatever else Trump might have in plan for trolling New York City. And they've agreed to drop the case, just flat drop the federal case against Adams. The memo explaining it, and I guess I should go around and collect them so that we can read up on the background of it at some point and just see how naked a power play it is. But as I understand it and reading it in passing, the memo didn't really give any reason for dropping the case. Just go ahead and drop it. It actually says, I think, in the memo, we didn't review the merits of the charges. We didn't make any kind of determination about whether or not we would be able to get a conviction or what other overriding circumstances might have driven us to drop the case. We're just dropping it. And I think they put a footnote in there. By the way, this is not illegal quid pro quo. It's not. It isn't. So just look away if you think that it is. And they just put that right in a footnote, which seems like a foolish idea. But, of course, the rule of law has to step in and do something and say something about it in order for that to matter. And, well, that's not the order of the day. All right, so instead, we have a number of items that touch on some other things. I guess while we're speaking about it, I might as well look up the leading story on the Eric Adams situation so that I can at least hand you a link or two in case you've somehow managed to avoid this story to this point. But I don't know, and maybe an interesting take on it might be the BBC's take on it. That came up first in the search for some reason. So, I don't know. You want to take a look at it that way? Crystal Hayes reports this for BBC News. U.S. Justice Department tells prosecutors to drop New York City mayor's corruption case. That seems to capture things. The order came from the acting Deputy Attorney General. Where's my acting? There we go. Acting Deputy Attorney General appointed by President Donald Trump, who said the indictment had restricted the mayor's ability to address illegal immigration and violent crime in the city. I guess he was so distracted by his own crimes that he wasn't able to fight other people's crimes. Okay. Adams, a Democrat, as they helpfully explain here, although, people in America would dispute that, has recently built a closer relationship with Trump, a Republican, and has told law enforcement to cooperate with the president's immigration raids, but he denies speaking to Trump about his case. Wink. The mayor is accused of accepting illegal campaign funds and gifts in exchange for his influence as mayor. He has pleaded not guilty to 5 charges. Prosecutors have not yet commented to indicate whether they intend to drop the case as requested. I guess technically they have that power, and then technically Trump would have the power to order somebody to fire them if they didn't drop the cases. So I guess that's the choice they'll be making. Lose my job, but put a temporary blip in the history of this stuff and then have someone else dismiss the cases and just be out of a job, or stay in a job that there's little point in staying in because I can't exercise any individual discretion or power, and the case is dropped. It's not a great set of choices, but I suppose if you're likely to get yourself chucked out anyway, you might as well stand up and say, I refuse to drop the case. Now fire me. But I don't know that they're going to go that way. Let's see. So I guess quoting from the memo here, you are directed, as authorized by the Attorney General, to dismiss the pending charges. Read the memo from Acting Deputy Attorney General Emil Bove. The memo adds that the case may be reviewed again after the November 2025 mayoral election. So stay in line. You can't have us drop the case and then stop cooperating with our immigration raids because we'll just charge you again. Although my recollection was that the memo directs the charges be dismissed with prejudice, which should ordinarily preclude your bringing those charges again. That's the end of it. You can dismiss them without prejudice. All right. At any rate, let's see. But perhaps I don't have the memo in front of me, although it's probably linked here. we'll take a look and see. We'll watch how this develops. I assume Adams won't do much to cross Trump and cost himself this reprieve. But apparently the memo says that the case can be reviewed again after the mayoral election, but it says no further investigative steps should be taken until then. It also tells the prosecutors to take all steps within your power to cause Mayor Adams' security clearance to be restored. Yay. Bove, who worked as Trump's defense lawyer during his criminal trial last year, wrote that the Justice Department reached this conclusion without assessing the strength of the evidence or the legal theories on which the case is based. It seems like something you wouldn't want to put in writing, actually. He said the move in no way calls into question the integrity and efforts of the prosecutors who brought the case. The memo followed a reported meeting between Adams' lawyers and federal prosecutors in New York. Adams has attended the presidential inauguration, also flew to Florida for a meeting with Trump. In recent weeks, the mayor has directed city law enforcement to cooperate with federal immigration authorities on fresh New York City raids. Critics say this undermines local sanctuary laws, which direct city leaders not to cooperate with authorities unless they are aiming to arrest dangerous criminals. Anyway, you get the idea. It's out there, and I don't know. The British, they seem to have a pretty good, firm grasp of what's going on. We could read the memo, but the memo is just, probably infuriating. But at any rate, that too topping the news. And now an experiment with a different tea for the morning. The peppermint tea was an older one that's still hanging around that Scott sent last year. So thanks, Scott. But not the golden voice. So if the voice seems particularly golden today, it's not because of the trademarked golden voice tea, but rather this peppermint stuff. All right, let's see. I also grabbed a couple of things about these court-ordered defiances and the various mechanisms by which they're using to infiltrate new and different government agencies, by which I mean the dodgy/Doge forces under Elon Musk's command. And as they spread from one agency to the next, let's see, the CFPB, of course, USAID, now allegedly at work in the Department of Education and the Department of Labor. There are some very interesting observations offered about the mechanism by which they're doing this and what it means. And I grabbed a Blue Sky thread from Jason Leopold, who's got a new series of articles out, has a flurry of them in the last couple of days, fueled by his obsessive, in a good way, FOIA requests. And it's interesting. I'm kind of curious to see how much longer FOIA lasts in this administration when, they're so intent on defying judicial orders. I'm curious how long it lasts and whether or not we're going to see any more FOIA disclosures. But there was some interesting turnabout in the way this stuff played out, and it makes Jason look rather prescient in his requests. So let's see. He posted, and there's a couple of intertwined threads. There's his thread and then his article, which he summarizes in the thread, and then other people's responses to the thread, which I found, and some of them are threaded as well, that make interesting observations along the way. Jason posts, I want to highlight what I believe is a significant document that I reviewed for this story. The story is, of course, linked below. It's a memorandum of understanding between Dodgy Doge and the CFPB. In all the coverage of Dodgy's takeover of agencies, I haven't read or heard about a document like this, and I think it stands out. Now, he then includes an earlier post of his from, I guess, the day before or slightly earlier in the day, one that actually contains the link to the article in which he he promotes it thus as Scoop, Inside Dodgy's Takeover of CFPB. What went down over the past 5 days based on emails and other documents and interviews, and crediting his partner in reporting. And this, they publish in Bloomberg, which ordinarily paywalls its stuff. I think he gave us all a gift link to it. We'll see whether it's still operable. The piece itself is entitled Dodgy, and we'll get this pop-up out of the way. Dodgy-backed halt at CFPB comes amid Musk's plans for X, his Twitter name, X digital wallet. And I really do intend to read through the article. It's going to be, I think, fairly revealing on a number of levels. But let's first read his summary tweet thread. So again, as he began, he said he wanted to highlight what he believes is a significant document, this memorandum of understanding between Dodgy and CFPB, which he thinks is a unique angle on the story. The team's initial entry to CFPB on Thursday had been accompanied by an assignment agreement. That's the styling of the memo they carried with them when they showed up, between Dodgy and CFPB. It explained that authority for the CFPB operation emanated from a January 20th executive order. It also said the scope of the Dodgy team's work would include, quote, work on software modernization initiatives, the promotion of interoperability between agency networks and systems, and the use of software engineering to, quote, champion the use of modern technology development and management approaches. So I guess that's supposed to be the cover for government efficiency, right? They claim to be a Department of Government Efficiency. What's the reason for, well, why start with CFPB at all? That, too, is addressed, I think, in the article and hinted at by the title of the article. He's interested in creating a digital wallet function that he would integrate into X/Twitter for some reason. He's got this idea, apparently, of a master app to control them all. This sort of an online world that not only facilitates communication via microblogging or whatever we now are calling the Twitter type format, but also cash transfers. And I assume also cryptocurrency transfers as well, that it should be a part of everyone's life. The government will exclusively communicate with its, I guess, subjects, we'll now have to call ourselves, through Twitter/X. Plus, you should also all be doing your banking that way. And one of the major impediments to allowing that to happen would be, one, the FDIC, and also under attack, and the CFPB, which would protect you from shady dealings and any problems. So if you deposit all your money with Elon Musk and say, now I have a digital wallet and I can go buy things, and all of your money in your digital wallet disappears and Elon Musk is richer by that amount of money, tough luck. There's no CFPB to help you and no FDIC to insure your deposit. And couldn't we have it that way? Couldn't we have it entirely unregulated so that I could steal as much of the money that was deposited with me as possible? And the answer used to be no, and now it's, I don't know, probably yes, because there's nobody around to say no. That seems to be the heart of this drive here. But as Jason Leopold explains it, so the team shows up with this assignment agreement, and it has cover language for why would Doge find themselves in CFPB. What are they after? Oh, we're modernizing the systems here, including erasing the parts of the system that allow us to regulate online banks. The Memorandum of Understanding, which bore the seal of the Executive Office of the President, says CFPB leadership will see to it that the Dodgy will have full and prompt access to unclassified agency records, software systems, and IT systems. It notes that Dodgy shall adhere to rigorous data protection standards. Well, or not. And that CFPB should, quote, ascertain and mitigate any conflicts of interest or confidentiality protocols. Initially, CFPB officials were told that a Dodgy team needed just read-only access. There's that stupid term again. read-only access to their human resources, procurement, and finance systems. By Friday evening, according to an email sent that I reviewed, Russ Vought had instructed CFPB to give Dodgy administrative access. That's much more than read-only. I'm sending this email in my capacity as acting director of the Bureau of Consumer Financial Protection, Vought wrote in the email. You'll recall, of course, he's the head of the where did they install him? OMB. But like Marco Rubio, Trump has entrusted him with a couple of other acting directorships of stuff that doesn't have a director yet, but which needs a loyalist to rubber stamp garbage and bogus orders. So Russ Vought is acting CFPB head. So in his capacity as acting director, he says, give him access to the whole thing. See my attached letter, which has been signed by me, or so he claims. This email also constitutes my authorization to begin work on the agreement. A few hours later, CFPB's X account was deleted, and the homepage of the agency's website was partially dismantled. Visitors to the website now see a 404 page not found message when visiting the homepage, although links to most of the pages are still accessible. CFPB employees who read the Memorandum of Understanding started back-channel discussions about it, raised red flags, according to 5 people familiar with the matter. They asked why Dodgy would need access to the HR, finance, and procurement data if its goal was to modernize the agency's software. Good question. By Saturday afternoon, according to 5 people familiar with the matter, the Dodgy's team had administrative access. It had expanded beyond that, giving users the ability to choose which of the agency's internal systems they can explore. And, well, most security experts say, yeah, that's not really a great way to keep things secure, just sort of handing over the keys to the administrative access. And as people were pointing out, there are, or as others responding to his thread pointed out, there are a few unusual things about this. In responding to him, Christopher Mims, Wall Street Journal's tech columnist, as he identifies himself in his Blue Sky bio, says this is an absolutely astonishing report. Dodgy did a complete takeover of CFPB's systems at the root. This is identical to worst-case scenarios for the most devastating cyber attacks by foreign actors. Only this is an internal threat. You remember that yesterday Greg mentioned Wired magazine used that terminology in one of their headlines, pointing out that the activity that's going on in most of these agencies constitutes what cybersecurity officials in the before times used to call an insider threat. Not only was the security of the network being compromised, but it was being done, of course, by the people supposedly entrusted with its safety. And that's what makes this unusual. Mims goes on to say, I'm not a political scientist, but I do know a thing or two about cybersecurity. And as far as I know, our government has never faced a threat like this. The only limit on the ability of Dodgy to summarily shut down any government body is whether or not its IT admins can prevent it from accessing its systems. Essentially, I think if I'm reading this correctly, it's just basically saying that rather than using either executive orders or actual legislation or judicial orders, one of the 3 actual recognized branches of government, and an actual a process that's supposedly accountable to various stakeholders, including the population, and the citizenry of the United States, to change the structure of government, rather than going through a legislative process to do that, or even some sort of series of executive orders, they simply say, well, if we can seize control of the IT systems through which a modern government agency, department, what have you, manifests itself for the citizenry, i.e. our internet presence and its ability to enforce regulation, make rules, spend money in furtherance of those rules, and defend its rights and prerogatives and orders in court and validate them that way, if you can cut off the money that it uses to pay its people to do these jobs, remove its presence from the public square, and order it to surrender in any adjudication of any disputes, then you can effectively get rid of the agency without any legislative intervention or presidential intervention or any of the processes we've built that validate the existence of agencies and bureaus and departments in the normal times. You know, the people empowered to make the decisions about standing up a new agency or closing down an existing agency are not a part of this. It's simply, can we erase them from the internet and turn off their access to the bank accounts such that there's nobody getting paid to do the work and nobody getting paid to defend the prerogatives of the agency. That's the whole thing. And normally when that sort of thing happens, because you know that the only valid way of shutting down an agency or bureau is through legislative action, or I guess, in some extreme cases, perhaps presidential directive, because you know that's the actual way of doing it, you would know, well, the disappearance of this agency from the internet and their inability to cut paychecks for the people who are employed there is a bunch of glitches. It may be being caused by hackers, but that would be that'd be a huge problem. But we'll work to mitigate that threat and get rid of that. Everybody knows that this is an actual agency of the government and it exists. But when the rest of the government is dedicated to saying, no, its disappearance from the internet is an indication that it doesn't exist, and the official position of the president is that it doesn't exist, we're not sure what to do with that. And you can see why that's confusing. Hi, everybody. It's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and patreon.com, patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. All right, so we were in the middle of reading about this rather extraordinary method of takeover and elimination of government departments via hacker attack, essentially. And that's the way Christopher Mims views it from a technological perspective. And there's just no political science model for this. But it's essentially, I guess, I don't know, a commentary on the power of paperwork. And since Trump has largely been unable to actually, find the energy and verve to actually do the hard stuff, the paperwork that makes things happen, I guess the next the fallback position for him is, what if we erase all the paperwork that other people did in order to make things happen, and then say that's the new norm. That's the way things are going to work from now on. But as Christopher Mims was explaining, I'm not a political scientist, as he says, but I do know a thing or two about cybersecurity. And our government has never faced a threat like this. The only limit on the ability of dodgy to summarily shut down any government body is whether or not its IT admins can prevent it from accessing its systems. Honestly, I'm so floored, I'm having trouble wrapping my head around this, he goes on to say. The reason Musk is arguing on X about the power of judges, and that too has been a thing in the last 24 hours, every time they lose in an initial fight about restraining orders or whether judges say are willing to go on record and say, yeah, what Dodgy here is doing is illegal. He declares that, I think the terminology he was using, this is a judicial coup. In other words, invalid, and we should blow right past it. The reason he's arguing that about the power of judges seems on its face to be that he's recognized that just because you can shut down systems doesn't mean the law does not apply. And that bothers him, right? We are erasing the presence of this agency from the internet and turning off its ability to pay its workers, communicate with outsiders, and advocate and defend itself in court. But if it doesn't work and the law still says this agency exists, it's just that the technological access to to communications outlets has been turned off, then he needs some way of undermining the judicial system so that no one buys that explanation. It's pretty interesting, and a couple other people chiming in on this thread. I'm going to skip down a little bit past some of the other responses because Mims continues, although I don't know whether he's continuing. I can't tell from the way these guys thread things on Blue Sky whether this is continuation of his discussion with himself or he's responding to someone else. But let's see, if he leaves off by saying, I'm so floored and having trouble wrapping my head around it. This is Musk arguing about the power of judges seems to be him dealing with the fact that he suddenly come to understand, oh my God, just because I erased them from the internet doesn't mean they're gone, which if I'd read the original reporting more closely, Mims says, I would have noticed is impossible because the 2025 architect, I guess Project 2025. Oh, okay. I think he's responding here to where he says the only limit on the ability of Dodgy to summarily shut down any government body is whether or not its IT admins can prevent it from accessing its systems. In other words, the existing IT teams inside of an agency, can they prevent Dodgy from getting in and dismantling them? And here he continues and says that's, if I've read the reporting closely enough, is impossible because the Project 2025 architect, and here we mean, I think, Russ Vought, who is head of OMB, is now stepping in and telling folks to grant Dodgy access. In other words, as he's saying, now he's giving us a too long didn't read summary. It sure feels like we're at the point where Musk can shut down anything in the federal government that he decides he wants to shut down unless people with sufficient power in the current administration decide to stop him. As long as there's accord on what to shut down, this will continue. And I think that's a pretty accurate read of it. What he's, I guess, trying to say, and it's kind of hard to piece it together from this thread, and maybe the article at this point would have been the way to go now that I think about it. But I wanted to get Mims's comment in here just about the way he says, the problem is our cybersecurity systems are not designed to deal with the head of an agency saying, I give you my permission to destroy this agency. It's not ordinarily what we see done here. And it's a new development. The insider threat is a real problem. It occurred to me that there was perhaps an analogy to be made if for those of you who watched and I guess remember seeing the Game of Thrones series. If you were watching closely enough and you're a big fan of it, you might remember there's an episode in the story somewhere along the line where, just to put it in the timeline here, where somewhere after everyone remembers the Red Wedding, right, at which they were supposed to be marrying one of Walder Frey's daughters to Edmure Tully. I mean, you have to remember all the characters. If you just have a passing familiarity with Game of Thrones, I guess it won't make sense. But now they've got Tully as their captive. The Lannister family has the Tully heir as their captive. The Tullys are the lords of, what was it, River Run Castle. And at some point, another branch of the Tully family, the guy known as the Blackfish, right? One of the prior lord's brothers, younger brothers, takes possession of River Run Castle and is fighting the Lannisters. The Lannisters are laying siege to the castle, at which point the Lannisters pull out their captive, Edmure Tully, who's technically the actual heir to that seat and therefore the Lord of River Run, although he is outside the building with the besieging army, and inside one of the other branches of the Tully family is resisting the siege, and they bring out the guy who's technically heir to River Run to say, I'm with the Lannisters now, surrender the castle. And the forces inside feel compelled to do it. Our boss, the person who's technically in charge of all of us, says, surrender to the invaders. And they feel compelled to do it. And here, same thing is happening here. Russ Vought shows up and says, I've been commissioned by the president as acting head of the CFPB. I want you to give Elon Musk access to your root IT systems so that he can dismantle it and from the outside make it look like CFPB has been dismantled and decommissioned. The law says it still exists because the methodology for its dismantling hasn't been executed here. They haven't rolled out the decommissioning process approved and agreed upon by law. They simply painted over the sign, fired all the people, turned off the check writing so that, all right, if you say you're not fired and you go and you sue and the court says, yeah, you can't fire these people, that's fine, but I erased them from the payroll system. They're never going to get paid. Well, you have to pay them because they're not fired. Well, then sue my payroll people because they say those names aren't on the list and this is going to take forever to kind of sort out. I think that's kind of the methodology that they're going with here. Let's see if I can't, maybe we can share a little bit of Jason Leopold's writing and connect it to this. For what it's worth here, there'll be this connection to one of the, I guess at this stage, alleged motivations for doing this at CFPB among the first group of agencies. What you might wonder why they're targeted, or why not take over the FAA and do something about the safety, given that there are planes crashing every other day. Could be, price of eggs might be something you want to spend some time on. But apparently CFPB comes first. And here's Jason Leopold and Evan Weinberger explaining why in Bloomberg, Doge-backed halt, that's hyphenated, Doge-backed halt at CFPB comes amid Musk's plan for an X digital wallet. The government efficiency team's initial read-only access expanded quickly to encompass closely guarded data, internal emails say. And, it looks like the gift article, I guess we've missed our window here. That's too bad, which is unusual and disturbing for various reasons. But let's switch gears and see if we can't get the other methodology and use pocket version here. In another weekend takeover of a federal agency's operations, staffers from an efficiency initiative led by billionaire Elon Musk helped to effectively shut down the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau as they gained access to an array of the Bureau's protected information. The actions began last Thursday when 4 young staffers working under Musk for the Departments of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, showed up at CFPB's Washington headquarters. At first, they had what was described as read-only access to a limited array of documents, including the agency's personnel files, procurement records, and budgeting and financial data, according to emails shared among CFPB officials. And now I guess our access to this thing dries up somehow. I wonder if we can get back this is too bad. This is annoying. You're initially gifted the article by the author of the piece, and then you find yourself shut out after all. Let's see if we can go back to his tweet and then click on this thing and see if it'll give us back the view, or the computers are going to choke us off here. Let's try again. It's here for a minute. Let's see if it remains. Then, late on Friday night, the dodgy staffers were granted access to all the CFPB's data systems, including sensitive bank information and enforcement records, according to 5 people familiar with the matter, and emails seen by Bloomberg News. The people asked not to be identified, citing concerns over potential retribution, of course, very common in this day and age. But by Sunday, the agency was a skeleton, with its funding limited and activities suspended. Musk, whose social media platform X has recently begun firming up plans to enter the online payments industry, has already predicted the demise of the consumer watchdog agency. He didn't respond to a request for comment. It's not really much of a prediction. If you are the guy enabled with, or granted the power to erase the outside presence, the evidence that the agency exists, and you plan to do it, that's not really a prediction. That's what's on my schedule for Monday. Anyway, the weekend events came after Russell Vought, who heads the White House's Office of Management and Budget, ordered wider access for Dodgy. According to an email to CFPB officials that was seen by Bloomberg, Vought sent the email Friday evening, about 90 minutes before news broke that he'd also been named acting director of the Financial Enforcement Agency. Vought is the architect, or an architect, of the Heritage Foundation's influential and controversial government overhaul plan called Project 2025, which appears to have guided Dodgy's attempts to dismantle portions of the federal bureaucracy. Earlier this month, the team played a key role in the administration's effort to shut down the U.S. Agency for International Development, another long-standing conservative bête noire. The Bloomberg News sought comment from Musk, Vought, and the Dodgy team members in the White House. None responded, of course. Next up, Project 2025 calls for abolishing the CFPB, which Congress created, and of course Congress should be involved in its dismantling and decommissioning as well, but they're just skipping that part. But Congress created as a consumer watchdog in the wake of the financial crisis that precipitated the Great Recession. So I guess we're headed for another one of those as well, just for fun. On Saturday night, Vought sent an email instructing its employees to stop, quote, all supervision and examination activity, and, quote, all stakeholder engagement, and he announced that he would decline additional funding for the Bureau, saying its current account balance of $711.6 million is excessive. These steps came one day after Musk posted the message, CFPB RIP, next to a tombstone emoji on his personal X account. The CFPB is mandated by law to perform direct supervision on large banks and other companies it oversees. Supervision in the financial regulatory world means that examiners look under the hood at a company's operations. CFPB examiners have access to banks with $10 billion or more in assets, but they also oversee debt collectors, payday and other online lenders, consumer credit reporting companies, some fintechs, did they say fintechs? Financial tech, and payments processors, and a host of other companies that banking regulators don't monitor. The agency's former director told a congressional panel last year that it had returned $20.7 billion to consumers since its inception, and you can't have that. The confidential supervisory information CFPB examiners collect is stored on an agency laptops and in its internal supervision examination system, a Salesforce platform. That data, including customer information and complaints, new products under development but not yet released to the public, and financial information, is valuable and closely guarded, the 5 people said. Well, it's not guarded at all anymore, of course. While there's no evidence that dodgy staffers have begun studying any of the examination and enforcement records, employees of the Financial Oversight Agency questioned the appropriateness of giving the Government Efficiency Initiative the ability to access those records. Just 9 days before his dodgy team visited CFPB, Musk's X, the former Twitter, announced that it had struck a deal with Visa to process peer-to-peer payments. Musk has publicly mused about expanding into payment services since he first took control of X in 2022. Entering that business could, and ordinarily would, bring CFPB oversight under rules the agency finalized in November. The records Dodgy can now access would include sensitive and potentially competitive information. That might be of some value to someone who is trying to get into that business. Dodgy's engagement with the Consumer Protection Agency unfolded over several days, and its scope gradually expanded. On Friday, 4 Dodgy staffers, Gavin Klieger, Luke Farrator, Nikhil Rajpal, and Jordan Wick, were described as needing to be onboarded and provided with complete building access in an email sent to half a dozen CFPB officials by Chris Chilbert, the agency's chief information officer. 2 additional Dodgy team members, Christopher Young and Jeremy Lewin, were provided with CFPB email addresses, were copied on the correspondence. In the email, which was seen by Bloomberg, Chilbert asked employees to give the Dodgy team the benefit of the doubt. Well, how about no? I know there's a lot going on in the press and on social right now, Chilbert wrote as a child. It's hard to separate fact from fiction. It's not. Please reach out to me anytime. Don't. You have questions or concerns. I'm very proud of the work we've done to build a strong technology foundation, and I think we've got a lot of good things we can show. The team's initial entry to CFPB on Thursday had been accompanied by an assignment agreement, or a memorandum of understanding between the Efficiency Initiative and the Consumer Agency, a copy of which was seen by Bloomberg News. It explained that authority for the CFPB operation emanated from a January 20th executive order. It also said that the scope of Dodgy's team's efforts would include work on software modernization initiatives, the promotion of interoperability between agency networks and systems, although it's actually quite the opposite. We're going to shut down the operability of this agency's networks and systems, and the use of software engineering to, quote, champion the use of modern technology development and management approaches. But it was all just cover garbage. For we're here to erase the place. The Memorandum of Understanding, which bore the seal of the Executive Office of the President, said the CFPB leadership will see to it that Dodgy will have full and prompt access to unclassified agency records, software systems, and IT systems. It notes that Dodgy shall adhere to rigorous data protection standards. This was all in his tweet thread, right? And that CFPB should ascertain and mitigate any conflicts of interest or confidentiality protocols. Of course, huge conflict of interest for Elon Musk, but they just ignore that because I guess he doesn't show up at the door. And to the extent that there's a conflict of interest, we could just erase that. Initially, CFPB officials were told that a Dodgy team needed just read-only access, right? By Friday evening, according to an email sent by Chilbert that was seen by Bloomberg News, Vote had instructed CFPB to give Dodgy administrative access, a much broader form of permissioning. The employees were forwarded an email sent to the agency by Vote. Attached to it was a signed memorandum of understanding. I'm sending this email in my capacity, he says, as acting director of the Bureau of Consumer Financial Protection. Paperwork error. We can't help you. Sorry. Oh, they haven't claimed that, but they could. This is what Vote wrote in his email, seen by Bloomberg. See the attached letter, which has been signed by me, allegedly. This email also constitutes my authorization to begin work under the agreement, right? Okay, a few hours later, CFPB's X account was deleted. The homepage of the agency's website partially dismantled. Visitors now see a 404 page not found message, though most of the linked pages are still accessible. CFPB employees who read the Memorandum of Understanding started back-channel discussions about it, raised red flags. They asked why Dodgy would need access to human resources, finance, and procurement data if its goal was to modernize the software. One employee sent an email to CFPB Chief Operating Officer Adam Martinez and his aides, asking them to pause and ensure that the systems that are being provided to the Dodgy team are consistent with the law. It's a good question, right? The email expressed concern about potential actions that may accidentally lead to data breaches, unintended access, and other risks to the American public. It's unclear whether the employee received a response. Martinez didn't respond to a request for comment on Sunday. And here's another section of the article under the subheader of Chipotle order. Let's find out what that is. The dodgy team were given senior advisor titles at the agency and worked from a conference room in the basement of CFPB's headquarters. It must have been galling to see teenagers and college students listed as senior advisors to anything. But okay, the CFPB's union, the employee union, attempted to greet them at the door, but the dodgy teams were standoffish and didn't talk to anyone. That's consistent with your basic IT personality type, I would think. According to multiple people familiar with the matter, the dodgy employees largely stayed in the basement. They're used to living in people's basements, I guess. One was spotted emerging to pick up a Chipotle order for lunch in the CFPB lobby. That's when they see these people. By Saturday afternoon, according to 5 people familiar with the matter, the dodgy team's administrative access had expanded, giving its users the ability to choose which of the agency's internal systems they can explore. So much for read-only. That night, Vogt began laying the groundwork for overhauling and at least temporarily shutting down CFPB. He sent an email to all agency employees under the subject line, Directives on Bureau Activities, which prohibited them from issuing any public communications, continuing any pending investigations, or launching any new ones. It also ended all supervision and examinations. By Sunday afternoon, Martinez, the chief operating officer, ostensibly, sent an email to CFPB staff informing them that the agency's headquarters will be closed this week. They should work remotely. But, of course, I don't know what they plug into remotely since most of the systems have been shut down. Employees who were in the office were ordered to vacate the building by the agency's director of security. So you work at CFPB, you want to know what's going on at CFPB? Well, you're not allowed. You're kicked out of the building. Meanwhile, as it turns out, Musk has all sorts of plans to launch a profit-making quasi-banking electronic wallet system on Twitter, and the agencies that would oversee that and regulate it and might otherwise slow down its development and launch are simply being turned off. There's another piece here that I think touches on the same area of inquiry over at Alternet, an opinion piece by Robert Reich. As a matter of fact, under the title of, Is This Trump's Biggest Corruption Yet? This is actually a different corruption. It's similar in idea and design to what Musk is doing, but I don't know. I mean, I imagine Musk will be skimming a great deal more money out of his venture because it'll be collecting and skimming from the money of millions of X users. But meanwhile, Trump's got his own smaller bore, but still very costly corruption scheme going on elsewhere. Connect the dots. We are told last week, Trump's social media corporation, the Trump Media and Technology Group, in which Trump personally owns a majority of the shares, Truth Social, announced plans to sell financial products. What happened to it being a social media platform? Well, I heard Elon Musk was turning his social media platform into a financial institution. I'm going to do the same, except I don't know how. All right, we're going to sell financial products, including a Bitcoin exchange-traded fund, ETF. I don't really know. Is that the name of the fund, or is that the type of fund, ETF, aimed at what Trump calls the patriotic economy? Its shares jumped 6% on the news. Devin Nunes, Trump Media's CEO, said the Trump ETFs, there's my answer, give investors a chance, wow, thanks, to put money into, quote, American energy, manufacturing, and other firms that provide a competitive alternative to the woke funds and debanking problems that you find throughout the market. Woke funds, debanking problems. What? That's actually in here, right? But not what. But the woke fund, asking these questions. Woke funds, debanking problems? All right. 2 weeks ago, Kash Patel, Trump's nominee to direct the FBI, was given 25,946 shares of Trump Media, according to a Securities and Exchange Commission filing. They're now worth about $840,000. What was this a payoff for? Last weekend, the Trump-Musk regime shuttered the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. The federal government is no longer protecting consumers of financial products, which is, of course, why Trump wants to offer them to you now. Trump-Musk ordered all work to stop at the CFPB. Its X account was deleted, its homepage unplugged. CFPB employees who went to the building on Sunday to retrieve things they needed to work remotely. Remember, you all have to work remotely? All right, well, I need my laptop. No, go away. Turned away by security. Keep connecting the dots. The shutting of the CFPB was welcomed by the crypto crowd, including Musk, and by those issuing Bitcoin exchange-traded funds, that's the ETF, such as Trump. Besides his financial interest in crypto, Musk has stated publicly he's seeking to create an everything app that could be used for all financial transactions. Mark Zuckerberg and venture capitalist Mark Anderson are aiming at the same thing. So there's a bit of competition going on here, but what if you could view all of their confidential data that they'd submitted to the regulators in order to launch properly and just steal that, plus also take over the regulators. And now all of a sudden the regulators, to the extent that they exist at all, say, oh, well, Elon Musk's version of it passes muster, but nobody else's does for some strange reason. We don't have any reasons, but that's the pronouncement of the still existing entity here at CFPB. The CFPB had proposed that such apps, like these guys are trying to do, be supervised by the same way that banks are supervised, which makes a certain amount of sense, as they are telling people you can put money in here and store it here, and you can use it to make payments. It's kind of the way people use banks, but not a bank. Well, how should we regulate it? Well, they say you should not. And that's their answer. The CFPB had proposed that such apps be regulated the same way as banks, but scratch that now. How about no supervision? And no insurance either by the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. Brace yourselves for fraud and bank runs. Yay, that'll help the price of eggs, I think. Musk, Zuckerberg, and Anderson, all Trump backers and lapdogs now, of course, had claimed that the CFPB was trying to debank or remove them and other Trumpers from the banking system. In fact, the CFPB proposed the first ever rule to block debanking, whatever that may even mean in their mind. Anderson is invested in companies like Synapse, which have cost many people's life savings. I'm not even familiar with that one. Some firms in his portfolio were shut down by the CFPB for scamming people. Zuckerberg says Meta is not a bank, but wants to become one, I guess, and its own currency, too. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's finish up reading this piece from the opinion piece from Robert Reich and see what he can explain to us on our way out the back end of the piece here. So as we were saying, Zuckerberg says Meta is not a bank, although it has a payments business, and Zuck wants to start his own currency. Now connect all the dots, and what do you see? An oligarchy unleashed and in the open. Their extraordinary wealth is buying the power to make them even wealthier. It's bad enough that Trump and Musk are making room for their own personal financial products and those of their major backers. Trump's financial products also invite people and corporations seeking to curry favor with him to invest in his products. Outright bribery, in other words. Who will be left holding the bag? Surely anyone gullible enough to put their savings into one of these initiatives. Worst case, all of us, if the stock market crashes and pulls the economy down with it. This, my friends, is pure corruption. Mark my words, it will blow up in Trump's and Musk's faces. I just hope it doesn't blow up in ours, too. But, of course, it involves so much of the economy and, of course, the ability to direct the government to bail it out at our expense, I would add, that there's just no way that it doesn't blow up in our faces, and every chance in the world that to the extent it blows up in Trump and Musk's faces, they can just simply order the government to pay to undo the damage, just the way they're doing with everybody else's FO here. If a Trump supporter F around and finds out, you can just erase the find out by redirecting federal funds their way to make them whole again. All right. There's a couple of other items that I think would be of some interest to add to this. The New York Times reported the other day, and it's been sitting here for a couple of days, and I'll give you the story because I think this is linked to all this. So I guess we'll make this today's theme. Early crypto traders had speedy profit on Trump coin, as others suffered losses. Can you imagine maybe who might have had speedy profit and who might have suffered losses? Some traders made tens of millions off of a new cryptocurrency launched by President Trump and his sons, remember, just days before the inauguration. Many others lost out, as it turns out. Eric Lipton and David Bellany reporting on this for the New York Times on February 9th. The curious trade, they're going to focus on just by way of storytelling at the outset. The curious trade came a little past 9 p.m. on January 17th. A $1,096,109 bet. Less than 2 minutes after the soon-to-be president of the United States posted on his social media account that his family had issued a cryptocurrency called Trump coin. What is it? $ Trump. That's how you would find it online in these electronic wallets. $ Trump. I don't know how you pronounce that out loud. But at any rate, so just less than 2 minutes after Trump posts on, Truth Social, I'm going to be starting my own cryptocurrency. Somebody bet $1 million on it right off the bat. In those first minutes, a crypto wallet with a unique identification code beginning 6QSC2CX, some upper lowercase, a random series of secure whatever, like one of those secure passwords, essentially. It doesn't give any indication from the code who owns it, right? But in those first few minutes, this crypto wallet with this unique identifier secured a giant load of these new tokens, 5.9 million of them. There's a very specific number, but it's about rounds to about 5.97 million at the opening sale price of just 18 cents each, starting a surge in the Trump coin price that would soon reach $75 per token. So somebody came out and bought almost 6 million of them at 18 cents a piece. And then the buying frenzy. We got to get in on this brilliant new scheme by Donald Trump. Oh, my God. Bad idea. Now they're selling then they were selling at $75 per token. Now, this early trader, whose identity is not known, walked away with a 2-day profit of as much as $109 million, according to an analysis performed by the New York Times. Probably, by the way, good guess, Barron Trump loves the cryptocurrency. But the fast profits for early traders, whose names are unknown, but some of whom appear to be based in China, that's interesting, came at the expense of a far larger number of slower investors who have cumulatively suffered more than $2 billion in losses after the price of the token crashed, right? You come out, somebody buys 6 million of them off the bat. Oh my God, they're super popular. Look, 6 million of them have already sold within minutes. I'm going to get on this too. And you buy it and it goes up and up and up. And the demand like that drives the price to $75. And then somebody buys in thinking it'll go to $150 pretty soon. But instead, the person who bought the 6 million of them says, aha, $75 a coin. I bought at 18 cents. Sell. $109 million in profit to me and huge losses to everybody else. But there's even more than that, as I recall hearing in discussion. We'll see whether the article covers it. As of the middle of this week, and that was last week, more than 810,000 wallets had lost money on the bet on Trump coin, according to an examination that the crypto forensics firm Chainalysis, how do you like that? Chainalysis performed for the New York Times. The total losses are almost certainly larger. The data does not include transactions that took place on a series of popular crypto marketplaces that started offering the coin only after its price had already surged. The price of Trump coin hovered around $17 this week, less than a quarter of that peak $75 value. Whether people made or lost money, it was a stellar business for the Trumps. This is the important point. Nearly $100 million in trading fees. You get paid that way whether people win or lose. $100 million in trading fees have flowed to the family and its partners, although most of that has not yet been cashed out, the Chainalysis data shows. President Trump set off this scramble 3 days before he was inaugurated, triggering a rapid boom and bust sequence that has now raised broader questions about the speculative dangers of so-called meme coins, a type of cryptocurrency based on an online joke or celebrity mascot. He promoted the coin on his own social media platform as well as on Elon Musk's X, saying, "Join my very special Trump community. Get your $Trump now." I don't know how you say that, $Trump. Trump coin? It's my best approximation of a term that will allow people to know what the hell we're talking about, right? What does $Trump mean? The chain of events is hardly surprising. Several former state and federal financial regulators said it is effectively a part of the design of the entire meme coin industry, which is legal but largely unregulated. The trading is built on large early buys by sophisticated traders who pump up the price only to sell their holdings as less experienced retail investors follow their lead and buy in and often end up with the losses. What makes this situation particularly troubling to government watchdogs and other former regulators is that the Trump family is profiting from this exploitative pattern at the same time that Mr. Trump is rapidly moving to bring an abrupt end to a regulatory crackdown on crypto by several government agencies. The president is participating in shady crypto schemes that harm investors while at the same time appointing financial regulators who will roll back protections for victims who may insulate him and his family from enforcement, said Corey Freyer, who recently left a post as a crypto advisor to the Securities and Exchange Commission. The losses on the Trump coin bet were very real for hundreds of thousands of investors, including some who are vocal supporters of Mr. Trump. I don't really care about them, but okay. In the days before Trump was sworn in, Sean M. Whitson, 40, of Walnut Cove, North Carolina, owner of a small computer repair business, had celebrated Mr. Trump's return to the White House. "Today we take our country back," Mr. Whitson wrote with a photo of Mr. Trump on Inauguration Day. He also expressed hope that Trump coin would rise in price. Guess what? By the end of January, Mr. Whitson was fed up. "Done with this Trump coin crap," he wrote in the social media posting. Mr. Whitson, reached by the Times on Friday, expressed disappointment. "That coin is a joke." Well, it is. He's right. Over the past 6 months, President Trump and his sons have made a series of aggressive forays into the crypto industry. As Mr. Trump promoted crypto on the campaign trail, he also helped start a company called World Liberty Financial. We've heard about that one, which offered a digital currency called WLFI to certain wealthy investors with experience in financial markets. That's what the SEC regulations would call sophisticated investor. And when you have that kind of person, all regulatory bets are kind of off. That's always kind of been the case, even prior to Trump. Last week, Trump Media and Technology Group, the parent company of Trump's social media platform Truth Social, announced that it was moving into the financial services industry by creating a brand known as TruthFi, Truth Financial, I guess, that will offer investment products tied to Bitcoin. Trump Media's chief executive, Devin Nunes, called the offerings, quote, "a competitive alternative to the woke funds and debanking problems that you find throughout the market." Are they going to give us any better explanation of that? But the debut of Trump's meme coin was the first time the Trump family had marketed a new crypto token directly to ordinary investors. At the request of the Times, crypto experts reconstructed some of the early trades made by buyers of Trump's token, examining their profit-taking and how, once the initial buyers started to dump their holdings, the price of Trump coin then crashed, hurting other investors. The analysis of crypto transaction records was executed by the forensic firms Nansen and Chainalysis, as well as by Molly White, a independent crypto industry researcher who's often critical of the industry. The data was then reviewed by the Times. This pattern of big, fast buyers entering and then selling out of their meme coin holdings is part of the reason that state regulators in New York recently warned consumers about these offerings, saying that creators or their associates artificially inflate the price of the coins, then sell their own coins rapidly at an inflated price, reaping substantial profits while causing the price to crash. It's the pump and dump or rug pull move that we've been hearing so much about it. Regulators called these maneuvers pump and dump schemes and said they can leave buyers who come in late with big losses. Well, don't come in late. No evidence has emerged that Trump or his associates artificially inflated the coin's price or engaged in insider trading. Asked about the early Trump coin trades and profit-taking, the president's middle son, Eric Trump, declined to comment. Let's see the explanation. The starting gun. In the crypto world, every transaction is recorded on a publicly viewable ledger known as blockchain. Typically, the names of the people making the trades remain hidden, with each account identified only by a long chain of letters and numbers. The blockchain allows crypto analysts to go back and look at new offerings and decipher what each wallet did, when it first invested, when it transferred any tokens or sold them off, and what the ultimate profit and loss turned out to be for every play. This analysis can also point to anomalies in trades that raise questions. For example, blockchain records show that the Trump token was minted at 9:01 a.m. Eastern Time on January 17th, creating a so-called contract address. It was not announced by Mr. Trump for another 12 hours, but the account behind the first large public purchase, the $1 million plus bet, was created about 3 hours before Trump launched the coin. An analysis of public crypto transaction records found it had been filled that evening with virtual currencies seeming ready to pounce on a new offering, which had, again, not yet been announced. Weird, right? The well-timed trades and the fact that the wallet received its funding shortly before Trump's coin launched immediately drew skepticism from crypto analysts who speculated that a trader had been acting on inside information. Had to be. No announcement made yet, right? In the crypto world, pinning down the person behind the trade is sometimes impossible, which might encourage someone like Barron Trump to try it, I would add. It is common for people to post big and sometimes unverifiable claims on social media before abruptly disappearing, making it difficult for amateur investors to distinguish legitimate investments from scams. This month, an X account claiming to represent a Dubai-based crypto trader named Syed Samir posted that he was the owner of one of the wallets that had orchestrated the first giant Trump coin trade worth $1.1 million. Mr. Samir, who also claimed to be an investor in World Liberty Financial, was subsequently accused on X of using insider trading information to get in early on the Trump token. But the examination by the Times found inconsistencies in the claims on Mr. Samir's website and X account. After he was confronted with those issues, Mr. Samir said in messages on the chat app Telegram that he did not actually control the wallet. Oh no, it's a front for something. I can't believe it. Something or someone. Mr. Samir had lied about it. He said, for clout, to be honest with you. I know it's stupid and childish, but yeah, I was messing about. Next up, the Lucky 31. What is clear, based on blockchain records, is that the person behind that $1.1 million trade is a big player among the hordes of professional traders who rapidly buy up and then sell off new meme coins, trying to cash in on speculative surges as the coins are issued. After making the purchase, the owner of the account then rapidly moved to sell the coins, generating a profit of at least $50 million, according to the analysis of the transaction by Aurélie Barthier, of Nansen. I'm sorry about your name there, but that's the firm you work for, Nansen. Further sales brought the total profits to $109 million, according to a review by Ms. White. Other large Trump coin trades have also drawn attention, including one by a trader who started buying the coin about 2 minutes after it was launched. The trader then sold those Trump tokens in less than half an hour with a net profit of $2.7 million, the blockchain shows. It's hard to dissuade people from engaging in this. I assume if you can make $2.7 million in half an hour, people are going to try it. Just under 700,000 wallets recorded gains on Trump. The examination by Chainalysis shows the early trades were some of the most profitable. 31 of these large early traders made $669 million in profits in a matter of days, according to the Nansen analysis. But for every winner, there were even more losers. Across the first 19 days of trading, a total of 813,294 wallets registered losses, either by cashing out at a loss or holding onto coins that had plummeted in value. The losers, who paid more for the token than it's now worth, cumulatively lost $2 billion in actual or paper losses. Still, many of these traders are holding on to their money-losing tokens, perhaps hopeful that the price will rise again, the data shows. What else are you going to do, right? The profits mostly secured by the early buyers were enormous, a total of $6.6 billion in cashed-out profits, according to Chainalysis. $6 billion for doing nothing and helping no one. Isn't that amazing? And doing it all over the course of just days. Ephemeral and harmful, but hugely profitable and environmentally destructive. What a terrific endeavor. This is a familiar pattern for crypto traders. Of course, a few weeks before the Trump coin launched, some of the same wallets that bought the president's token also traded in meme coins like Hawktua coin, promoted by the social media influencer Haley Welch. The Hawktua coin surged in December after it was first introduced to a $490 million market capitalization, then crashed to $10 million as of this week, leaving thousands of investors with losses and generating a lawsuit claiming it had created a speculative frenzy. Of course it did, and violated federal law. Ms. Welch said on X that she was fully cooperating with and I am committed to assisting the legal team representing the individuals impacted. But if you give enough millions of dollars to Trump, they'll just eliminate that lawsuit as well. Anyway, this is similar to sports betting or gambling, said Gareth Rhodes, a former deputy superintendent at the New York State Department of Financial Services, which helps regulate the crypto industry and other financial services companies. The retail customer putting in their funds is doing so at risk of losing most, if not all of it, with the hope of an outsized payoff. That's essentially what it is. That sums it up nicely. But just wanted to let you know that, yes, that is everything you thought was going on with Trump's and cryptocurrency is in fact going on, and it's all pretty documented here. The only question is whether, in fact, members of the Trump family were among the 31 big players who made huge profits by moving either before the announcement of the coin or immediately afterwards, with the intention, of course, of performing the rug pull and stealing all that money from everybody. Hey, what you gonna do? I don't know. All right, let's see. A couple other stories, of course, sprinkled around, and we'll see which ones we can get to here that are most important. All right, I mentioned to you, of course, the earlier article in Wired that was among the first, I think, to use the term insider threat over at Treasury. I don't know that, well, let's see. How long is the article? It might be worth reading through, if only because it was the first one to note that things were insider threats. Although this one was dealing with Treasury per se, not CFPB, but I think the claim is largely the same. Again, from Wired, an internal email reviewed by Wired calls Doge's staff access to federal payment systems the single greatest insider threat risk that the Bureau of the Fiscal Service has ever faced. Just wanted to remind you that that's where the terminology comes from. And, of course, the people who have made that determination, I guess, have since found themselves separated from federal service and locked out of the system. I think this was the article that pointed out that, yeah, anybody who actually tells their bosses, yes, what's going on here should be considered an insider hacking threat, suddenly finds themselves out of a job. So I think that's the origin of that particular storyline. But I do have another Wired piece parked right next to it that I don't think we've read through yet that might be of some interest. This one, how it came to be that all these teenagers were doing all this work for Elon Musk, the recruitment effort that helped build Elon Musk's Doge army. I thought it might be interesting to find this out. At least 3 individuals associated with Palantir or its co-founder, Peter Thiel, were involved in an online recruiting effort for the Doge group late last year, Wired has learned. Let's read a little bit about that and see if we can figure out any of the connections here. The establishment of Elon Musk's so-called Department of Government Efficiency relied on a recruitment campaign carried out in part by young software engineers fanning out across online chat groups and Discord servers, according to 3 sources and chat logs reviewed by Wired. Some of the engineers are associated with data analytics firm Palantir, or its co-founder and board of directors chair and Musk ally, Peter Thiel. This, by the way, if we get to it, can be read alongside another, I don't remember if it was an article or a Blue Sky thread, accompanied by some articles outlining that some of these guys reached out to one another and found one another here and elsewhere in Discord threads, which are associated with essentially, rogue hacker gangs, some of which have strange connections to criminal underworld activity, up to and including, of course, human trafficking and sexual exploitation of minors, as well as psychological exploitation of minors that results in self-harm in many cases. And in many cases, that's the aim of it, which is, a little unusual for then bringing those people inside highly sensitive and highly classified government IT systems, you might think. All right, but let me continue with this particular article, how the recruitment worked. As dodgy staffers, many of them young and with little or no government experience, or any experience whatsoever, really, continue to gain access to sensitive data across a dozen government agencies. This is the first look at some of the networks from which the agency is recruited and who they relied on to enlist talent. In online chat groups linked to Palantir alumni and SpaceX interns, Musk's space company, as you know, as well as in a Discord server associated with a military artificial intelligence program, the engineers said they were looking for people willing to spend 6 months in Washington, D.C., cutting federal spending, which accounts for around a quarter of the U.S. gross domestic product, by the way, cutting it by a third. Is that even a good idea? No, it's not. Anthony Jansko, Jancso. So Jansko, not certain how you would pronounce that exactly. One of 3 engineers associated with the recruitment effort is a former Palantir employee. According to sources, Jansko said he was recruited to Dodgy by Steve Davis, the Boring Company president and Musk lieutenant, whom Bloomberg reported in December was leading recruitment for Dodgy. Palantir, Jansko, and Davis did not immediately respond to a request for comment, neither did the White House. Jankso's resume lists him as a 2021 graduate of University College London and as having been a forward deployed software engineer at Palantir between December 2021 and May 2023. Jankso is best known for leading a project called Accelerate SF, which aims to leverage AI in the public sector. Whatever, that's pretty vague, but okay. In a 2023 story about a then upcoming hackathon, VentureBeat reported that Accelerate had received support from companies including OpenAI, which, by the way, I did see bandied about yesterday that Elon Musk has made a purchase bid of some kind for OpenAI. But this hackathon was, going to Accelerate, and their hackathon had received support from companies including OpenAI and Anthropic. In 2024, the venture became known as Accelerate X. Oh, what a fantastic name change that is. Very imaginative. Purporting to offer, quote, a modern OS operating system for government, Accelerate X claims it, quote, transforms government infrastructure with AI-powered automation and software delivered in days. Boilerplate. On December 26, 2024, in a message reviewed by Wired, a person using a screen name including the name Anthony and the same handle that Jankso uses on his X account posted in a Discord server associated with the Space Force Generative AI Challenge, the military AI, an 8-week combination of AI crash course and problem-solving hackathon that engaged 350-plus participants, according to its website. Helping the Department of Government Efficiency team find hardcore engineers, the message read. Send your GitHub/LinkedIn to @Dodgy on X, and your X handle to me in DM if you are interested in or know someone who is, could help get them into the pipeline. Okay. Got it. In early December, another message reviewed by Wired. A person using the same handle posted to a chat group for Palantir alumni. Hey all, the message read, I'm helping Elon's team find tech talent for the Department of Government Efficiency in the new administration. This is a historic opportunity to build efficient government and to cut the federal budget by 1/3. Now, no mention of whether that's a good idea or even possible, but okay. If you're interested in playing a role in this mission, please reach out to us in the next few days. Okay, so they're clearly doing recruitment. A person using the handle George Cooper followed on. Similar to Anthony's post, the message read, I'm also looking to refer people to Dodgy. Efficiency will always be an exceptionally hard, complex problem, and I personally believe we need the brightest people in the world to wrestle with that problem. All right, so more blowing smoke up their asses, of course, but obvious recruitment effort. We got that.
Sup, fam? It's your boy Darwin, a.k.a. Darwin_Darko, a.k.a. the most reasonable man in America, a.k.a. KITM's senior black correspondent. You might remember me from such recordings as Spacemen vs. Space Cadets and We Need to Talk About Joe Biden. Today, I want to bring you good news about that thing you've been struggling with. Do you suffer from giving too much of a damn? Do you turn on the series of tubes and find yourself outraged at the particular way some news organization strung some sentences together only to realize, nope, this is not some fictional hellscape? Well, guess what? You no longer have to accept the life of giving too much of a damn. You can do something about it, because even you, yes you, can be a show contributor. Now I know what you're thinking. Hey, Mr. Most Reasonable Man in America, I'm not some professional podcast talking guy. Don't worry about it. Do you have a smartphone or some other electronic recording device? Well, that's all you need. You too can have a segment where you can read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Fair warning though, side effects may include general punditry, having opinions and hot takes, getting stuff off your chest, and hearing your own voice. If your recording lasts longer than 5 to 7 minutes, please consult kagrox@gmail.com. That's KAGROX@gmail.com.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. I know, where there's lots of news events that we could and should be covering, but I wanted to catch up on some of this background here, which I think will, as we move in the balance of the week towards covering the developments in court, help us understand a little bit about the necessity for these moves in court and what the failure to enforce these court orders might be putting at risk. I know there's a little bit of esoteric background information here that I think will essentially make things make more sense later on. So again, back to Wired, which again is basically killing it on this tech side reporting. And I know tech isn't necessarily, I mean, for some of us, because we're streaming based and podcast based and therefore internet accessible, and you know, you have to be somewhat savvy to be, I guess. I know it's hard to believe that this is considered savvy, right? But somewhat savvy to access the live stream and or the podcast to begin with. And there are plenty of people who say that's beyond me. I can't do it. I guess we've self-selected, and the people here are more tech savvy, and a lot of them are, in fact, tech employed and understand this stuff innately. The rest of us still have to catch up. So, all right, there's a very clear recruiting effort going on. The fact that it involves Discord groups is weird in a way and a little bit disconcerting to the normies. But tech people will understand that it doesn't by itself mean that there are weirdos involved. There are plenty of normal-ish people who are either tech savvy or just young enough to have grown up in that atmosphere that participating in a Discord server by itself means nothing. But are there some weird and unsavory elements there? Yes, that's definitely true. Are those the ones that people like Steve Bannon, we've known for years, listening to this show, we've read plenty of articles. It's been a long time since we addressed it, but that Steve Bannon very purposefully dipped into the Discord communities looking for people that he might be able to convert to his cause. and has had some great success that way. So now they're recruiting for Dodgy there as well. So let's see. So a person using the handle George Cooper joined in with Anthony's recruitment effort. Reaction, it says here, to these messages was mixed. According to an online resume, George Cooper, or at least a George Cooper, graduated, it says here, from Lehigh University in 2019. Well, that's your problem, George. At any rate, as a Lafayette graduate, I can tell you, the kid started out behind the 8 ball. What can I tell you? He's a hard Scrabble guy just trying to make his way in the world with the disadvantage of a Lehigh University diploma on the wall. But hey, a fine place, I'm sure, except that it's graduating weirdo criminals like this. But everybody is, aren't they? Harvard's certainly no great shakes. Anyway, so George Cooper has, since his graduation, been employed at Palantir as a forward deployed engineer since May of 2024, following another stint at the company in a similar role from 2019 through 2023. He did not immediately reply to requests for comment. It's unclear what role, if any, Jankso, remember him, currently has within Dodgy, but one of Accelerate SF's co-founders, as reported by VentureBeat, is a former Waymo software engineer. Waymo, W-A-Y-M-O. I'm not familiar with it. Wired readers probably are. Waymo software engineer by the name of Jordan Wick. And we just did hear Jordan Wick's name called out as one of the people who landed at CFPB. If I'm remembering it correctly, was that in the earlier Bloomberg piece? Well, okay, so where were we here? One of Accelerate SF's co-founders, as reported by VentureBeat, is this Jordan Wick guy who completed undergrad at MIT in 2019 and earned a master's from the school the following year. Wick, according to government records reviewed by Wired, appears to have a Doge email account associated with the executive office of the president. Two sources tell Wired that Wick is among the team that has been given access to, there it is, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau systems and equipment. Wick did not immediately respond to any request for comment from Wired. Shortly after the email was sent, his online resume was removed because, government transparency and all. On December 5th, 2024, around the same time the messages associated with Jankso's handle were being sent out, a person using the handle Luke Farrator posted a message in a Discord server for SpaceX interns, and his name was in the Bloomberg reporting too. Hi everyone, I'm recruiting SWEs for Doge. Reach out if interested. I guess they all get bonuses if they bring people in. That must be part of the attraction for it. So an upbeat message, blah, blah, blah. We're going to fix the government. It ends the 6-month timeline. Remember, come in for about 6 months. Paid. Remember, though, originally Elon Musk was saying, well, no, they'll all be unpaid. Except, gosh, now that they control the payment systems, they're paid. Anyway, the 6-month timeline aligns with the 130-day work limit that special government employees are legally allowed to serve in a single year. Musk himself is, I would say, allegedly, currently categorized as an SGE, though no one's seen the paperwork for it. Luke Farrator, as Wired first reported, is a 23-year-old former SpaceX intern and Teal Fellow, now working as a Dodgy technologist. Politico has reported that he's now listed as an information engineer in an internal directory of the Department of Energy. He did not immediately respond to requests for comment. Since its establishment by executive order on the first day of Donald Trump's presidency, Dodgy has taken over key agencies at the center of the federal government, such as the Office of Personnel Management and the General Services Administration, and placed operatives in about a dozen agencies with the apparent aim of radically reducing the size of the federal workforce and increasing presidential powers. Its access to sensitive data and systems has placed Dodgy at the center of a growing number of legal battles. Early Saturday morning, a federal judge temporarily barred members of the task force from access to records at the Treasury payment system, through which the vast majority of federal spending flows, and ordered records in their possession immediately destroyed. As Wired has reported, a threat intelligence team at the agency recommended members have access to payment systems revoked, and that they be monitored as an insider threat. That's the article we mentioned before but didn't read. But I think we got the gist of it from elsewhere. And, of course, the real big problem that we'll probably spend the balance of the week on is, though federal judges are ordering these things blocked, these blockages are simply not happening. And where blockages on payments are ordered to be lifted, the lifting is not happening. The recipients of these funds reporting from various corners of the country that funds that they ordinarily had access to or were supposed to have access to, including continuing grants that people have contracts with, a 5-year grant signed by, in some cases, signed by the Trump administration and carried out throughout the Biden administration, and in some cases originated in the Biden administration, just suddenly not there anymore. Work cannot be completed because the accounts have been shut off or erased by Doge engineers ranging through the Treasury Department and other places. That's a real problem. All right, let's see. Back into Pocket and try and pick out some of the top line stories that I think we need to be able to piece together. We're going to skip the pennies issue for now because that's one that's been in the offing for a long time. But as I might have mentioned along the way yesterday, Trump orders Treasury Secretary to stop minting pennies, according to the New York Times. But like I said, that's been bandied about by numerous administrations over the last couple of years, widely considered to be not particularly impactful. I guess the only question is whether or not what made it a story was that Trump said he was going to do it by executive order when, in fact, ordinarily this is supposed to be done by an act of Congress. And there's really no reason to believe, like a lot of this stuff that's being done by executive order is being done by executive order because, as Stephen Dennis keeps putting it, he's got like the Stephen Dennis maxim. If they had the votes to do it in Congress, they would be voting to do it in Congress. That's what you do. If you have the votes, you vote. But because they don't have the votes to do some of these enormously impactful but unpopular or unlawful things the lawful way, or don't have the time or the patience to try, they're just doing them by executive order, and that's where the problem really lies. But here they would probably be able to do this legislatively and probably relatively quickly. There's not major opposition to doing this, but they're just doing it anyway, just to show, just to annoy people, essentially, is what's happening here. We're going to do this by executive order because there are people who know that this shouldn't be done by executive order. And we want to do things, in some cases, even things that are relatively popular and enjoy broad support, just to show we don't really care about the way things are really done here. And that's problematic in its own right. Definitely true. All right. Are we going to be able to read this one? I don't know. A Bloomberg News report. We might just be stuck with the headline on this one. I mentioned before in connection with the reporting of the recruitment effort that we just read by Wired. This from Bloomberg. Musk's dodgy teen, that's the youngest of the group, 19-year-old kid. Remember, big balls on, what is it, LinkedIn? How could you be there? I thought LinkedIn was like for serious stuff. Anyway, the dodgy teen was fired at some point in his short previous life by a cybersecurity firm. Why? For leaking company secrets. The kind of person you don't want in charge of government secrets. We'll see whether we can read the original or whether we still have a gift version of this. It looks like maybe if we hurry. Anyway, we'll see if we can get through this. This too, Jason Leopold on the reporting, and that's important. Also on the byline, Margie Murphy, Sophie Alexander, Jake Bleiberg, and Anthony Cormier, perhaps? I don't know. Sorry if I've got any of it wrong. The important stuff is here. Edward Korestein. That's the kid with the, as people have described, his broccoli head haircut. I say he looks like Denisovich, Dennis from Hotel Transylvania 2, I guess, and forward. Anyway, if you have kids or your kids have grown up recently enough to be watching Hotel Transylvania series, of movies on God knows what channel you would see it on, then you know who I'm talking about. But most of the rest of you know the broccoli head kid, the kid with the weird looking sneer who's posing in a button down shirt, shorts, and a ill-fitting blazer. By the way, mostly I see this picture is cropped. Very often, but it's the same picture. Very often they show it wider, and there's a big giant wall-mounted monitor displaying somebody's face who he's in a video chat with, and I'm curious about who is this person. Now they started cropping that person out. I don't know. Anyway, Edward Korestein had posted online that he had retained access to his firm's servers, the one from which he was fired. Now he has access to sensitive government information. Essentially, right, he was fired for leaking, and after he was fired for leaking, he boasted online, by the way, they say I'm fired, but I have retained access to the firm's IT systems because I installed a backdoor in there, and that's what I'm doing in government right now. Oh no. Quite untrustworthy. Edward Korestein, the 19-year-old member of Elon Musk's squad that is crisscrossing U.S. government agencies, was fired from an internship. He's only 19. It's the new MTV series, 19 and Fired, right? They should make that one. 19. Fired from an internship after he was accused of sharing information with a competitor. Edward has been terminated for leaking internal information to competitors, said a June 2022 message from an executive of the firm, Path Network, which was seen by Bloomberg News. This is unacceptable, and there is zero tolerance for this. Put him in the government. A spokesperson for the Arizona-based hosting and data security firm said on Thursday, I can confirm that Edward Korestein's brief contract was terminated after the conclusion of an internal investigation into the leaking of proprietary company information that coincided with his tenure. Afterward, Korestein wrote that he'd retained access to the cybersecurity company's computers, though he said he hadn't taken advantage of it. I had access to every single machine, he wrote on Discord in late 2022. If you want to know what kind of conversations go on Discord, yes, recruiting for Doge, and normies will think, well, recruiting among techies, sure, why not take place on Discord? Well, do take note that most of what goes on Discord, besides just gaming chat, is stuff like this, boasting about your hacking abilities and what you've stolen from people. Anyway, I had access to every single machine, he wrote on Discord in late 2022, weeks after he was dismissed from Path Network, according to messages seen by Bloomberg. Posting under the name Rivage, or something like that, R-I-V-A-G-E, Rivage, which 6 people who knew him said was his alias. 6 people. Korestein said he could have wiped Path's customer supporting servers if he'd wished. He added, I never exploited it because it's just not me. It looks like him, but it's not him, he says. I mean, he says it's him, but, that's not my style. But everybody who's seen this weird picture of him says it looks like the kind of person whose style it might be. His comments made in a Discord server focused on another competitor company, worried executives at Path Network who believed there was no legitimate reason for a former employee to access their machines. According to a person familiar with the incident, thank you for explaining hacking to us. The person asked not to be named, citing the sensitivity of the matter. In response to his firing, Korestein, who is wearing a blazer and shorts in one undated photo that was posted anonymously online, wrote on Discord that he had done, quote, nothing contractually wrong, unquote, while working at Path Network. Leaving out the ethical part, I'm sure. Several of Korestein's online peers and former co-workers said they were surprised that the teenage friend they knew has been brought into one of the most high-profile teams in the Trump administration. Mostly because he was a joker, I'm sure. I like that, too. I've done nothing contractually wrong. Which, again, I don't know if how well I trust a 19-year-old's view of contract law. But he says he's done nothing wrong. Several of his online peers are a little bit surprised about him showing up in this high-profile role. We found out his 2022 dismissal and the circumstances surrounding it add to questions about how he arrived in this new job with Musk's Department of Government Efficiency and how he'll handle the sensitive information that comes with it. Giving Elon Musk's goon squad access to systems that control payments to Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and other key federal programs is a national security nightmare, Senator Ron Wyden said. He, of course, a member of the Senate Intelligence Committee. Every hour, new disturbing details emerge to prove that these guys have no business anywhere close to sensitive information or critical networks. Earlier this week, Wyden and other Democrats on the Senate Intelligence panel asked White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles to explain how dodgy members were vetted and what steps the Trump administration had taken to ensure the classified and unclassified systems and records that the dodgy team has accessed are safeguarded from disclosure. Korestein, of course, didn't respond to any requests for comment. Attempts to reach his parents for comment through publicly listed telephone numbers was unsuccessful. The White House wouldn't comment directly on Korestein's employment, but an official who discussed the situation on condition of anonymity said all dodgy staffers under Musk were working as employees of relevant agencies with security clearances. Their employment is in compliance with federal law, and they are not outside advisors, the official said. Of course, that does hold out the possibility that it's a total lie, and I'm sure this is part of it, the security clearances they were granted are fiat security clearances just signed en masse by Trump. Here, write your name here, sir, so that people can do things with security clearances, not real ones, just ones that you grant. That is a power of the presidency. The official acknowledged that dodgy's operations were being viewed by some government employees as disruptive, but said the efforts were necessary to carry out Trump's vision. Korestein, who also interned at Musk's Neuralink, according to a cached online biography, is part of a core group of dodgy employees who are gathering data sets on government personnel, contracts, and programs, according to people familiar with the matter. They ask not to be named because they don't have permission to discuss the matter publicly. By the way, as I was reading this, what seems to be happening to me, like, why would Elon Musk hire somebody at Neuralink who had just been fired by another tech company for revealing proprietary secrets to a competitor and then boasting afterwards that they kept backdoor access to your computer systems? And I'm wondering whether the idea is, yes, it's a risk, and Elon Musk, I think, recognizes it. I wonder, though, whether he's snapping up people who clearly have hacker-type chops, although there's other reporting out there from peers, and this is common in the hacker and online kid community, but lots of his peers who say, his skills are not that great. But that's the sort of thing people say about one another all the time, whether it's real or not. But I wonder whether he's sort of snapping people up who are concerned that they're now unemployable, though they have undeniable skills, and the loyalty that breeds to the rich person who bails you out and gives you your life back by trusting you when no reasonable person should trust you is the bond that makes the thing work. Now, they may turn and bite you in the ass later on, and it's just the security of the United States at risk. So why the hell not try it, especially if you don't particularly care about the United States, or you think you're going to abscond to some cyber cloud network state based in Greenland and live your life out there. As dumb as that may be, or Mars, as dumb as that may be, it may be what's motivating their thinking. Anyway, in meetings of the USAID and the General Services Administration, for example, Korestein and other colleagues have discussed how they can use the data they're granted access to potentially replace government employees with artificial intelligence and train chatbots to do the work. Why not? If you've never had any work experience that you haven't been fired from for espionage, I suppose you probably believe that can be done that way. Korestein regularly posted on both Discord and the messaging service Telegram in 2021 and 22. When he was under 18, his posts are a mix of discussions about Path Network, coder talk, and lewd insults. Wired also reported earlier on some of Korestein's history online. On Telegram, he used language that suggested he was seeking a tool used in hacking, according to 3 people familiar with his online personas, a copy of the messages, and 2 people familiar with cyber attacks. The people asked not to be named to discuss these sensitive matters. Doge's moves across U.S. agencies have put a spotlight on how Musk, the world's richest person, tends to operate without regard for norms or traditional boundaries. Korstein's online postings and his termination from Path Network raised questions about how members of the dodgy team were vetted, if that was the right word for it, vetted. Trump's administration has not provided any detailed information on that process. Wall Street Journal reported on Thursday that a different member of the dodgy team had resigned after racist posts were discovered on his social media account. And, of course, both Trump too, I think. Trump, Musk, J.D. Vance, etc. all said, oh, yeah, that guy should be rehired. Why fire anybody for racist comments? That's a reason to bring him back. People familiar with Korstein's dodgy work said he would need a security clearance, at least the secret level, to access the secure spaces that hold some of the information that he and his co-workers are seeking. It's unclear what clearance he has, if any. Though Trump, on his first day in office, issued an executive order to grant top secret and sensitive compartmentalized information security clearances for 6 months to at least some individuals so they could, quote, immediately access the facilities and technology to perform their work. 2 U.S. law enforcement officials who investigate cyber crimes told Bloomberg they've been tracking online chat rooms that Korstein and others participated in for at least a year. Oh, dear. The officials, who requested anonymity for various reasons, which you probably understand, said they first became aware of him under the usernames Rivage and Joey Crafter while investigating an alleged hacker who Korstein was communicating with in an online forum. The officials wouldn't identify the hacker or the case they were investigating. In one message from November of 22, seen by Bloomberg, the Joey Crafter persona wrote, quote, looking for a capable, powerful, and reliable L7. That message, posted in a Telegram group, refers to a type of cyber attack that knocks out websites with overwhelming internet traffic. I think we all know what that is, the denial of service attack, DDoS, right? According to 3 people familiar with that type of attack and its terminology, who asked not to be identified, of course, and it may be that it's a different type of attack, but, we understand the idea of knocking servers offline. The Korstein's presence in the forums and his chat history wouldn't necessarily disqualify him from obtaining secret-level clearance, said Brad Moss, a Washington-based lawyer who specializes in security clearances, and that's because that information likely wouldn't show up during a preliminary vetting process, which includes speaking with an investigator and a background check, interviews with friends and neighbors, and scrubbing of public-facing social media platforms such as X, Facebook, and Instagram. Yet, for higher level clearance, it's much more likely they would have had to submit to a polygraph, and that kind of behavior would absolutely have come up, and it would have raised concerns. There are mitigating factors, though. How long ago was it? Was this person a minor? Is the person still engaged in it? Well, yes, they were a minor, but they were a minor last week. Now, according to other people who have been online with him, Korstein spent much of his teenage years on the internet. By the time he was 17, Korstein had started at least 3 limited liability corporations, all registered to the family's 5-bedroom house in Connecticut. Those include Mist Deck LLC, Diamond CDN LLC, and in a nod to Musk's publicly traded electric car maker, Tesla.sexy LLC. Oh, so smart sounding. An image hosting service. Of the 3 LLCs, only Tesla.sexy is still active. And by the way, red flag, 17-year-old with an image hosting service called anything.sexy is probably not a great idea. Edward Korstein also worked more typical teenage jobs. He was a camp counselor at a day camp and worked as a warehouse team member at his dad's popcorn company, according to a since-deleted LinkedIn account under the younger Korstein's name. I think I read elsewhere. When we say popcorn company, what we're talking about is his dad is a Wall Street type guy who made $1 billion, not a bazillion, but made a good amount of money. And as a sideline, I guess basically retired from his Wall Street job by acquiring an existing snack food company and running it. It's not like his dad was a popcorn savant or anything like that. He just bought a company that's what it was. He doesn't care about popcorn. He just cares about money. Anyway, Joey Crafter was a member of Telegram groups called Kiwi Farms Christmas Chat and Kiwi Farms 100% Real No Fake No Virus, both referencing you may know, an online forum known for harassment campaigns. Kiwi Farms, a real, weirdo collection of Moss Isley type people who, make it their business to troll and annoy people and threaten people online. Typically, the site has been used to share the personal information of a target, encouraging others to harass them online, in person, over the phone, or by falsely alerting police to a supposed violent crime or active shooter incident in their home, what we know, of course, now as swatting. In other online messages, the aliases that investigators said Korstein used have regularly discussed free speech and internet providers' roles in keeping websites online, including one that hosted the neo-Nazi site, the Daily Stormer. So, a fun collection of weirdos involved in his online chats. There is other information somewhere in here in pocket, which we won't get to today because obviously you hear the exit music playing. We're running out of time here, but somewhere in here is, I think, reference to a couple of Blue Sky posts in which people pointed out that Korstein was involved in a couple of Discord chats which are more closely tied to very unsavory angles on the internet, including harassment campaigns aimed at, for whatever reason, the point of which is to drive teenage users to self-harm and or to blackmail them into sending compromising photos. So in other words, the production of underage of sexually explicit materials featuring underage people. And, well, that's pretty unsavory and would probably lose you your security clearances in the United States government. But instead, we are waiting to find out whether tomorrow, Wednesday, people are going to properly get their Social Security payments, or whether any of them have been canceled, diverted, stolen, used to bribe people into sending nude messages. I don't know what. You don't know what. We'll find out in the coming weeks. It's fine. Everything's cool. Don't worry about it. Great.
You have been listening to Kagro in the morning
with David Waldman.
All right, so yes, we focused on a lot of this background information. You want some current news information? Well, don't worry about it. Justice Putnam's got you covered next with the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And, of course, let's see. We can start out with this top-line item. Trump lied to America with a straight face. It was the insurrectionist mob who were assaulted. They were the insurrectionists were the ones who were assaulted on January 6th. Okay, got it out there. See you tomorrow.